Community dinner, October 6th, 7th, 6th, 7th. Okay, October 7th. So if you're watching this is not, obviously we're having our live call now, but if you're watching the recording, then the theme is, we're kind of going into a fall cleanse. And this is something that if you're watching this, and I looked at my analytics today. Thank you, women, for watching the videos. I looked at my analytics and it's 100% women watching my videos, except for my buddy up in Sonoma, and he probably wants anonymity too. So Mr. B will just say, I know who you are. I know you're watching too. So thank you for your support. So you're watching this video, and what we're saying is I'm running a cleanse, and it's been very difficult to get people in a chair for a cleanse talk, or even a cleanse last since the you know what started. We'll just say, I don't want to give it any power by giving it a word. So fall cleanse then, and I was presented with the first question of the evening. So we're going to talk about cleansing tonight, and I'll do a quick screen share. Carol, if you guys want, if you guys want to see the screen share, then you can go sit behind me. Otherwise, you can watch the recording later. So I'm going to show you guys something that's kind of like tonight's agenda. So the fall season is kind of like, the darkness is increasing, the light's decreasing, the cold is increasing, the warmth is decreasing. So in that, there are metaphors that the ancient traditions use, like, what is dark? It's the mystery, it's the unknown, right? What's the light? It's the known. What's the wet? There's a certain feeling and attributes with the wet. What's the dry? There's a certain feeling with the dry. And what's the, so we're going into this time where life is sort of doing this. It's contracting. And this is the season of letting go. If you look into nature, what's nature doing? It's letting go of the fruits, and the seeds are all falling to the earth and rotting to some degree and going into the ground. So we call that, in Chinese 5-element cosmology, that's called the metal element, because metal is the most contracted of all the elements. More contracted than water, more contracted than earth, more contracted than wood, more dense than fire. So it's the most contracted element. But if you think about it, the light is also, this is the most contracted time of light coming up, right? Very little light on December 21st. So what we call the Day of the Dead, which is coming up November 1st, or Halloween, which in the West was called Samhain. So this is your history lesson. Samhain. You'd pronounce it Samhain if you try to pronounce it phonetically, but it's pronounced Samhain, like Sowan. Samhain. So if you just think Sowan, that's how it's pronounced. And that's a pagan word for the day that's halfway between September 21st and December 21st. So those halfway points, there's 4 of those in the year, right? There's one between the winter and the spring. There's one between the spring and the summer. There's one between the summer and the fall. And that's where ours is coming up. And we call that Day of the Dead. That's the day where the veil between the living and the dead is the thinnest. So the spirit voices are up. I'm hearing voices regularly right now. Every year that's the case, because I'm an empath. Other people perceive these as their own thoughts because they're identified with themselves and their own thoughts. But I know most of my thoughts aren't my own. So therefore, it's a constant, astonishing inquiry. Is this mine? And most people, they won't do that, and they'll just perceive it as, oh, that's my thought. I have a bad thought. I'm a bad person. That's what I used to, before I started meditating, that was what I started to ask myself. Be driving down the freeway and I'd have an image of myself as a 17-year-old angry punk rocker throwing a rock through somebody's window because I was mad at them. And I realized I'm a bad person because I have bad thoughts. But those weren't my thoughts, so it turns out. Those were the thoughts of the world that I had identified with as mine. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit tonight, about this process of going into darkness. And what has the Western world done? Christmas lights. Well, stay in the known. Don't go in the unknown. Bad stuff happens in the unknown, so they say. But that's where all spiritual growth occurs, is in the unknown. So it's interesting, in the Western world, the Christmas lights to me is like Yeah, I don't want to be a Scrooge and say they're not beautiful, right? The beautiful lights people do and the Santa Clauses and the reindeers in front of their houses, that part of it's kind of cool, right? But if you go fly above the earth on the darkest day of the year at nighttime, what do you see? Lights everywhere. You've been in airplanes, right? You see, it's like, it's astonishing. You're in an airplane. It's like, well, there's a lot of lights down there,
Yeah.
And it's like, so, should I say, yeah, okay. So we're going to go a little bit into this. I'm going to say one example there's one of my own examples, and you can look at the picture of the sunflower as I tell you my story, is there are initiations in life, and some of them are voluntary. We seek them out, and some of them are involuntary. And so I've been through my own initiation rites, many of them involuntary. Somebody asked me if I was a kind of a shaman a few weeks ago, and I said, no, I'm an involuntary shaman. I didn't ask for this shit. So mine was, I sought out this one. I was in Massachusetts, 1996, age 31. And there was this lake. I was up on this mountaintop in Beckett in Western Massachusetts, and there was this lake. It was like a good 15, 20-minute drive down the road, and a bike ride would be, half hour. So my whatever guidance was coming in that I call angels now said, you're going to ride your bike down to that lake in the pitch black when there's a new moon in the dark. And because I was reading Carlos Castaneda, and there was this technique where you run in the forest with your bare feet in the dark, and you don't hit trees and rocks and shit because you're doing this shamanic technique of running. And I got really fascinated with that. I was like, well, I want to try that, even if it meant killing myself in the process, right? But yeah, this is male testosterone stuff, I think, too. So seeking out the adrenaline rush versus avoiding it, right? So I'm kind of, part of me is kind of terrified, but I've got like, there's a switchboard around me, you could call it, of voices of sorts, and some of them are angels and some of them are demonic, and I know enough now to know which ones to listen to and act on, because of years of mistakes. Because the demons are very tricky. They'll pose as angels. The demons in us will pose as angels and trick us.
Good stuff, and then they block you.
How do I know that? Well, see, I'm not an idiot. I'm a scientist. So I read books like this, John Dee and the Empire of Angels. This is about Queen Elizabeth's shaman, magician guy in 1580 to 1600, and he was talking to angels. So he thought. Many of them were demons posing as angels. And this book is about the beginning of the New World Order, by the way. It originated in this book, 1580 to 1600. This is where the New World Order came in from the demons.
Was this after Henry VIII or before?
Elizabeth, this was 1580 to 1600, so I don't know where Henry fit in there, that timeline, but all I know is it's 1580 around there.
That was Boleyn's daughter then. That was
so
Queen Elizabeth.
So John Dee, I heard about him because my private membership association, excuse me, powers that be, my PMA is Health Alchemy. Why did Craig Lane choose the name Alchemy? It wasn't by accident. It's because of men like this. Paracelsus, 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 and John Dee are the reasons why. So Dee had this monad, it's called the hieroglyphic monad. Like hieroglyphics? We call it the hieroglyphic monad, and it was a symbol that had the whole universe in it. Looks like a flower. It's like an upside down sunflower right here. And it's like, that's quite a cocky, arrogant statement. I have the entire universe summed up in one symbol. Like, what? And so I watched a little animated video on a guy drawing the symbol, and as he's drawing the symbol and describing what each part of the circle, and the bottom looks like two butt cheeks sticking in the air, and then the symbol goes down, there's a circle above it, and it's like, I could see how he could make the claim, because symbols are only pointing at phenomena in life. You don't worship the symbol, you worship what the symbol is trying to describe. My teacher, Adyashanti, had a great saying. He says, at best, words are pointers towards reality, at best. I would say at worst, words are tools used to manipulate people. English is the most idiotic language in the history of the world, but we won't go into that right now. Our limbic system is in chaos all day. I am hot. I am cold. I am hungry. I am not. And in Latin, they have the correct way of saying it. I have, not I am. You see that subtlety? I have hunger.
Yeah.
Versus I am hungry.
It's huge.
That's huge beyond belief. It's a huge energy drain all day, every day, and people don't realize it's happened. But I do, because I'm a freak and I knew about it. You know, and I'm when I say freak, people really don't like it when I say that. I say freak with the highest of compliment to myself. Yeah, you go ahead. And so this book, I got fascinated about this symbol, right? Because, you know, if you have any kind of curiosity in life, you see a symbol and someone makes like a bold claim like that, it's like, I'm going to go read about this guy, you know? And this was a big renaissance of spiritual awakening in Europe, you know, but there was also the church. I mean, this was Leonardo time, Da Vinci, you know, and why did Da Vinci write backwards in a mirror on purpose? Because he didn't want to get hung for heresy from the church. Times have never changed, really. The heresy now is, oh, you dare go against what Fauci is science. Give me that fucking
The
cocky.
law.
Fauci
The
is
law.
science.
It's the law.
You go against Fauci. And it's like, and who is Fauci and Bill Gates? I mean, Bill Gates, as far as I understand it, was a liar or a ripoff, a cheat. He's not even really educated properly for the claims he's making. So when he gets up there and stands, like, oh, look at the clown. You know, Bill Gates, you're a clown. You know. Oh, YouTube will give me a strike for that probably. Anyways, so I digress way too far. So the alchemy then, as we know it, it's about transformation. And in this context, some of these alchemists could turn base metals to gold. They could, but there's a catch in that, because there's a metaphor to it also. Like Saturn has a metal associated with its lead, and the sun has a metal associated with its gold. And Venus is, I think, silver, and the moon is, maybe the moon's silver. And Mars is copper, I think, and Mercury is mercury. And, you know, all these planets have metals. And as you go closer to the sun, the metal's purer. And so as your heart purifies and you're more present and operating from your heart, then the metaphor is your heart is turned to gold. Why? Because you're totally 100% present. Men like Babaji, pretty close to pure gold, right? So you look at Babaji and what are his intentions for what he's doing? Is there any personal vendetta or agenda with what he's doing? Not much, right? There's a trace of subtle ego in there, but that has to be there. You have to have ego. You have to have a tool that makes you unique. Without the ego, you're nothing. So you need it, but you want to have it in the back seat, not giving orders. You don't want to drive in the car like most people, right?
Yeah, good point.
You have to use the tool.
Yeah.
Like there's so many people in our group, oh, Google is evil and Google blah, blah, blah. Google's a freaking tool. You use the tool, you don't be used by it. That's why I'm using it. You know, and so like a dentist has a tool. Dentists aren't evil, you know. They're not the ones putting in, they're not being, you know, they're being forced to put in these amalgams. Otherwise they lose their license. I've talked to at least 10 dentists, that's the case. You know, they try and go off the beam and do something original, they get a threat letter. I know many dentists.
My organic dentist.
I know
doesn't even
many
pick up
dentists
the
that
phone
quit for this
anymore.
reason.
Doesn't even, I mean,
What's his name?
it's a woman.
Yeah, you know,
Sunshine.
folks, so if you're watching this video and you've made it this far, I'm going to just finish my story up. So there was that story. That's the reason I got on this thing. So we're in this season, basically back to like, if you know, you have voluntary suffering and involuntary. So John Dee, you know, you go into this realm of like, I don't know, but yeah, I'm open to the idea. And so they were scrying on a crystal ball, and angels, I mean, where's their film and eyewitnesses and all that and proof? No, but we do have drawings and multiple vectors of story that, yeah, you got to go on the word that I hate, which is belief. I believe the book's true, but I have no basis of fact from that book, right? Just from all the other things I've seen that connect this man to the rest of us. So when your heart goes to gold, so the metaphor goes, this is why we cleanse, folks. This is why I cleanse. Because every time I cleanse, it's like polishing a mirror in a sense. It doesn't get you any more enlightenment. Be clear about that. You can only polish the mirror so much of the ego before you, but what we're trying to do is polish the dualistic earth suit enough so that spirit can shine through it a little more effectively.
Improving the tool that I
Discernment's the word. We cleanse for spiritual, emotional, physical discernment, and then our chooser function in my foundation 1 gets clearer. Like if you have brain fog, do you think you're making clear decisions? Hell no. And guess what the main cause of brain fog is, folks, that you'll never guess in a million years? What do you think?
The food you eat,
That's part of it. What about the food?
the digestion of it,
What about the digestion?
the food that's not digested.
What does your body need to digest food? What's the process there?
Bile.
No, just more general. Like,
enzymes.
what is it doing when your body's digesting food? It's breaking it down, right?
Yeah.
Okay, what does that require to break something down? Like you're trying to break down a
The
rock.
what they ask.
No, more general. What does it require for me to raise my arms and lower them? Requires something.
Energy.
There you go, energy. Just think very general. Requires energy to do digestion, right? Think very generally. Okay, right? Does that make sense? Okay, well, where's the energy coming from? I'm baiting you all.
The cells, the
Sure, where's that coming from?
The food.
Okay, food, sure.
Sun.
Sure.
Sun.
You're heading in the right direction.
ADP.
So there's a thing on the body that begins with an E called an enzyme.
I said enzymes.
Yeah.
Oh, you did? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So enzymes, when they say you got weak spleen qi in Chinese medicine, what they're saying is you have weak enzyme function. That's what they're actually saying to translate Chinese medicine to the West. Because enzymes run on energy, which is qi, right? Or prana, right? They all mean the same thing. They're not different. We just have different words for the same freaking force in the universe. That's why I call it natural law. So guess what number 1 cause of brain fog is? Lack of enzymes.
I take them.
You're not getting enough then, sadly enough.
With
You can't, with natural foods, you just can't believe how much you need. Like some of these products here, I take 12 Catalin multivitamin tablets a day. The recommendation is somewhere 4 to 8. The Saruta, the bioflavonoid one, I'll go through 40 to 50 tablets a day some days because that's the bioflavonoid radiation protection. And I just start craving them. And I'll go through the organically bound minerals. Most people take like 9 to 12 a day. I'll take sometimes 15 a day because I know what it takes to get me down to a baseline where I feel good in my body. I'm just that sensitive. And so with the natural, because most of us are used to a drugged up life. Even if you've taken painkillers at all in the last few years, your body's still numb. Advil, any of that. Yeah, it's too bad. That's why I haven't taken anything in 30 years. I am crystal clear. No pharmaceuticals have been on my body for 32 years. Not for any reason. I could have died a couple of times from the pain. Don't get me wrong. That's why I have kratom and poppy and all that around me now.
I don't know what they gave me in the hospital.
Exactly. So that's why you need mega doses of the natural, see, because you need a chemical-like effect. Does that make sense? Because they give you chemicals and your body gets used to this hyper drugged out chemical effect. And then the natural just seems so wimpy compared to that, right? Doesn't that make sense? Yeah. That's why sometimes the nutraceutical B vitamins work so well, because you're not getting a real B, but you're not getting a drug. You're getting this chemical derivative that's helping the process along. But you know what's wrong with synthetic Bs? There's no enzymes. They're just chemicals. So then your body is in a more enzyme depleted state when you take the chemical Bs or the ascorbic acid or the vitamin D. They don't give you enzymes to process that with it.
So
That's only comes from the natural stuff.
So when you do this bad stuff,
Like sunlight's a way better form of D because there's no enzymes being used up.
so when you do take the artificial D, whatever, then you're clogging your system up even more.
Oh, way more than people realize. People, look, if the sunlight's decreasing, so the sunlight, vitamin D is sort of a filter, and A is the real sunlight vitamin. And A was, by the way, the cure for low hemoglobin, not iron. The data and all the spreadsheets and the charts.
Like cod liver oil.
Cod liver oil and liver were the top 2. Yeah. Cod liver oil and liver were the top 2 back in the day. And because vitamin A helps control iron metabolism too. Wasn't that interesting? Because iron referred to in our body by Steiner was called meteoric iron. Steiner used to say oxygen in our body doesn't resemble the oxygen out there. Iron in our body does not resemble the iron out there either. He said we have meteoric iron in us. Isn't that interesting?
From
Our body either
elements.
transforms the stuff that comes in from the elements, or there's a transmutation process that happens through the bacteria in our gut with the iron too.
Wow.
Yeah, and our body is so good at recycling iron, we only use up 1 milligram a day. So be very, very wary. Look, read every label now, because they put iron, fake iron in bread, in cereals, and packaged foods. Anything on the package, you have to read the label now, because iron causes cancer. So that's why these vitamin A's and the copper and the magnesium are the 3 most important control elements for iron. Because copper and magnesium go into that mitochondrial thing where they're controlling the iron and oxygen metabolism. It's like the guy at the furnace making sure there's the right amount of logs in there. That's the copper and the magnesium. Without them, you've got this just too many logs in the fire. Then what happens? It gets too hot. And that's called free radical activity, oxidative free radicals. So the 2 control elements are copper and magnesium. And where do you get those? Wheatgrass, chlorophyll, and liver has the perfect zinc copper balance, because vitamin D3, when you take it, upsets that balance. Zinc, when you take it without copper, upsets that balance. Ascorbic acid, when you take it without the other part of the vitamin C complex, upsets that balance. So every COVID recommendation upsets this balance if taken long term. Now, isn't that interesting?
Yes,
Wow.
legal doctors don't have.
So the
clue.
best way for chlorophyll would be,
Live green juices, fresh out of the earth, freshly picked, because then you're getting the vitamin C.
so if it's been refrigerated, the lettuce that you.
The longer it's been refrigerated, the less life force. That's why I add kefir to it, because then it's not rotting, it's fermenting with the kefir stuff, maybe even turning into something better. If you think positive, the bugs living in that container are part of your breath, then they're going to make something positive. But if you think they're going to make something negative, they're going to make something
But
negative.
if it's goat milk kefir that's been pasteurized first and then it's made into kefir, is
That's
that
good.
possible? It's still okay?
Yeah,
Goat milk,
that's how I'm doing
but-
my
but
kefir.
it's pasteurized.
Because it's not milk. After 24 hours, all the milk is digested by the kefir bugs, and it's kefir poop.
Okay, okay,
You're
good.
drinking kefir poop from the original
Okay.
source was pasteurized.
So leave it sit outside more.
24 hours is what you want your kefir to sit out. If it's cold out below 65 degrees, you want it out for 3 or 4 days. I know, because it starts to separate into curds and whey. It's right over here. See, this is about 4 or 5 days. It hasn't been that warm. So see, it's ready. And so it separates into curds and whey. Then you know that it needs either a little shake to mix it up a little bit.
How long will that last?
I need to change this. I'll probably change it tonight or in the morning. So I could let it go in this kind of weather for a week, and it wouldn't be much of a problem. But if it was 90 degrees out, I would need to change it twice a day, because heat increases enzyme activity. See, so when it's hot, you gotta bring it inside and get it out of the hot weather. Right? They like it about 70, 75, these bugs. So when it gets above that, it goes faster. When it goes below that, it goes slower. It's well known in bread making. Like, they do sourdoughs over in Europe in the cold winter days. They might let it ferment for 2 weeks, like by the fire or something. Yeah, you just add a lot of salt to it, and it's definitely a salty or sour bread. But I've done some myself, and with my team years ago, and it's definitely alchemy. Like, you can take a gluten-infested wheat and make a good sourdough bread, and 24 hours later, the gluten's digested by the bread bugs. And that's not talked about much. Michael Pollan had a special about it on Netflix. It was Earth, Air, Water, and Fire, cooked. It was called Cooked. Like, it was great.
But
10
you
years
have
ago.
to eat that pretty quickly now.
Once it's separated out and put into a separate jar, I've got a couple in the fridge. I've been there for weeks. I won't drink them now, but I'll make them into kefir cheese.
Oh, cheese.
So I'll do a demo next week. I'll do a kefir cheese demo next week, because that's sort of cleanse worthy.
It becomes solid, a solid cheese.
Yeah. So what they are, they're sitting in the jar in the fridge for a couple of weeks, you can imagine, and it's kind of separated now. So what I do is I just take old t-shirts that I've washed in hot water and disinfected,
Yeah.
and I cut a square piece out of the old t-shirt and put it in a strainer, like one of those set, one of those pasta strainers,
Like
and then
cheese.
pour it in, and then the whey strains through,
Yeah,
the clear
curd
whey,
stays in.
and then the curd stays on top. And then once that's drained through about 24 hours, then I take that and put it in a bowl, and I add about a tablespoon of salt per cup of kefir curd. And that's about the right amount of salt. That's how much salt goes into cheese making,
Wow.
but a tablespoon per cup.
Wow.
That's why you never want to have refined salt in your cheese if you can help it. And
Yeah,
what do
sea
have most
salt.
of the cheeses out there? Even the raw milk, beautiful cheeses out there are using refined salt.
Right, not good. That's amazing.
You understand the world I live in now? You talk about,
I want to leave the planet when I hear all this.
Oh,
I mean,
I'm cooking
in the
all my own food.
90s,
I
it
felt
took
so
me-
much better.
so it took me about 10 years to adapt to the lifestyle. I had a macrobiotic lunch kit I walked around with all day because I was so terrified of the food supply. So I was vegan too. It makes it even in the 90s. You fucking kidding me? So I mean, it was better in the 90s and the 80s and the 70s, that's for sure. But I need to go back to the point though. Let's see. Yeah, we're gonna go. Okay, so we're back to this. Cleansing brings you more discernment. There's more gold. You're in the more present moment. And so to finish that story about making gold from lead, these alchemists, they discovered the same thing I discovered. I got partly into meditation and whatnot and yoga because I wanted to have Luke Skywalker powers to manipulate others, bend them to my will. I wanted to levitate, and I wanted to be in two places at once, and that way I could have sex with two different women at once. I had all these weird young man urges, And I kind of knew it at the time that the ego's driving these decisions, but and I'm getting into this for the wrong reasons, but nevertheless, it drove me into it. And then 4 years into yoga, I had this awakening experience where it crushed a lot of those motivations that started out with, just annihilated them.
Wow.
And so the saying as it goes is, yes, you can turn lead to gold at a point, but your heart has changed so much you don't care anymore. When you be careful what you ask for, you might get it, because the ego's dead at that point, long gone. By the time a guy can make lead from gold, the alchemist, he or she is so transformed that it's like, I can only do the bidding of the divine now, because I know what the divine is, and I know what I am actually, and I'm just a channel of the divine, not just a magnificent, beautiful manifestation of the divine. We want to get that just word in check, because we do that to ourselves. We diminish our power. So by letting go, it's a season of letting go. There's another part of this season though, because the colon and the lung are considered the metaphorical organs of this season in Chinese cosmology, in the 5 element. Okay, so why would they do that thousands of years ago? Why would they pair the lung and the colon together? Think of a general process, a very general process. I gave you half of it just a minute ago. This is the season of blankety blank. Okay, so that's half of what, right? The colon lets go of stuff, doesn't it? The lungs let go of stuff. They have that in common, right? Well, what else are they doing? That's half of it.
Respiration.
What's respiration? Remember, we're dealing with people out there that they don't even know what the hell we're talking about. So you have a and a, so what is that? You're and letting go.
Exhale.
You're taking in and letting go.
Okay.
So there's a rhythm of how we take in and let go. And that's the master part of this cycle of the metal element, is how are your rhythms of taking in and letting go. And I discovered long ago that I'm an exhaler. I'm a very bad inhaler. So therefore I'm used to giving and I'm not used to receiving. Your inhalation represents your ability to receive. Exhalation represents your ability to give. Generally. Ever thought of that? No, because you don't hang out with freaks like me. That's why. That's stuff I think about my whole life.
I did not think about those two being related.
It's why I'm a teacher sitting up here, though, because I'm the person that the divine's coming through and making others think of that, because it's a broader awareness, not superior, broader. In
Ayurveda, in the development in utero, the lung and the colon are kind of at the same time.
Oh, I have a great, you should come to my class. I'm right now, I'm doing a PowerPoint animation of the baby developing in the womb according to 5 element theory. I'll send you the little video when it's done. I'm still perfecting it. And it's so cool. Like embryology in Chinese medicine. Yeah, in Ayurveda, They have a very beautiful way of describing how we form. It's way more accurate than the Western view. So I'd love to share that with you because you would appreciate it. The women always appreciate the stuff. So we're taking in and letting go. So the lungs take in good stuff and let go of bad stuff. What's the colon taking in? Because the colon's taking in and letting go too. So what's the colon taking in? It's absorbing stuff. What's it absorbing?
Need food, nutrition.
It's kind of the end of that cycle, but it's taking in fluid. Bacterial excrement, to be quite honest. Most of the bugs in our body live in the colon, by far. Small intestine, another order of magnitude down. And then beyond that, it's just way down orders of magnitude. And we're talking billions upon billions and billions and billions. There are more bugs living in our colon than there is the rest of the cells of our body, of our own cells.
Yeah.
So you can imagine, so there's a lot of bugs eating and shitting inside you. I mean, get your grasp that. I had to grasp this over 20 years ago. I thought of this and no one else had ever thought of this. I was like, I'm not a shit can. I'm a bug shit can. I'm a big can of bug shit. I was like, holy fuck. I just had this moment of like, wow, there's microbes that outnumber my own cells that are eating and pooping inside me. Wow.
We used to do wheatgrass enemas.
I do them.
You do
I do.
wheatgrass enemas.
I do green juice enemas from my garden, comfrey enemas, comfrey green juice enemas.
So you could do an enema every day.
No, wouldn't be wise.
Yeah.
I'm an expert in this. I've done
Yeah.
15,000 enemas in the last 20, 25 years.
So how often would you do it?
Now I'm during the cleanse. It's all contingent. People ask me these absolute questions like this, and I go, well, let's throw back the metaphor then, lady number one, in anonymity. Lady number one. So when you're a kid and you're really tired, you're kind of napping in your bed, your mom asks you to clean up your room. Are you going to clean up your room? No. See, if your cells are tired, are they going to clean up the waste moving around? Nah. It's all contingent on vitality. So Ayurveda has words for this, and Chinese medicine has words for this. So what I do is I take people's pulses, and you have to take the pulse regularly for a few weeks or a few months to get a baseline. If you come in there and never taken their pulse before, and then you take their pulse one time, you don't have a baseline on where they're actually at because everybody's pulses are different. It's all relativity, right? So if their pulse is normally, say, 2 millimeters wide, and suddenly their pulse is only 1 millimeter wide, and it's sank deeper into the body, is that a good idea to do a cleanse? It's telling me the chi has gotten smaller and shrank in. You probably don't want to cleanse. But if the chi is smooth and on the surface, and there's a balance between the bottom and the top of the pulse, we would say, I've been doing this for 25 years, and it's still amateur. It feels like it's so hard doing pulses. But there's a rhythm there, and the top and the bottom are equal, and there's a certain level of vitality, we'd say yes. But I have another way to measure this. It's called the Raglands Test. Raglands, Dr. Raglands Test. And it's a way to measure, quantify adrenal fatigue. So you lay down for 5 minutes. You've done that. Have you done the test with me?
I don't know.
You guys haven't seen me professionally to do I have an hour-long exam I put people through, and it's definitively the best assessment out there.
You might have done it on me.
So you lay down, put the blood pressure cuff with your arm, you lay down, you hit the timer for 3 to 5 minutes, and then you lay down, and then you take the blood pressure after you've been laying down, and it'll be like, say, 110/70, pulse of 60. And then you write that down, and then, so you've been laying down for 5 minutes. So doesn't it make sense that your metabolism would slow down a little bit?
Yeah.
Sure. So when you stand up, as Dr. Ragland put it, everything should rise about 5 to 10. The pulse rate and the blood pressure should rise 5 to 10 units, roughly. So that way, if it's 110/70 when you're lying down, then ideally it would be 115/75 when you stood up, right? Will that make sense? Because you're going from horizontal, blood pumping horizontally is very easy to do towards the brain, versus now the brain's vertical and you got to pump blood uphill. Kind of a little more difficult, right? So you should raise the pressure in the system to get it up if you know engineering. And then the pulse rate should go up a little bit too, right? So what ends up happening though is if you have adrenal fatigue, the signal from the brain is saying, hey, stand up and raise the pressure, but the adrenals are tired and it can't do it, and the blood pressure falls when you stand up. And then the greater the amount it falls, the worse your adrenal fatigue is. And this does play out subjectively. Generally, when people are falling 30 or more points consistently, they are showing signs of severe fatigue and exhaustion, to the point where a physician that I know that inspired me to do this test. So one of his patients was a cardiac patient and his blood pressure had fallen 35 points, and he sent him off to the hospital immediately.
Wow.
And the guy had a heart attack an hour later. So I do this test on everybody that wants to cleanse. And a member of my team, we were talking about her earlier. You guys know who she is. She over cleansed, and we were checking this, but not often enough. And then she over cleansed, and she's been in basically a state of exhaustion since. Why? Because she's taking care of too many other people and not herself. A true martyr like myself, a true martyr like all of us in this room. We give and give and give, and then we end up like shriveled raisins, I call it. We're fucking just shriveled up raisins because we've given, and we didn't listen to the balance. The only way to restore the log of yin and yang, the log that burns the fire of yang, is to rest. There is no substitute, folks. You have to rest. And it doesn't matter if you sleep. Yogananda never slept an ounce the last 10, 20, 30 years of his life.
He never slept?
He was in a state of samadhi. He didn't need to sleep. He was not identified with his own body. Therefore, he could just lay down and just rest and be awareness.
Oh, okay.
It didn't matter if he slept or was awake.
He didn't need to lay down?
But when I don't sleep, lady number one, I don't stress about it. It's the stress that makes it a non-restorative resting time. It doesn't matter if we sleep, it's all in our head. My grandmother drove herself to suicide for this very reason. She'd sleep 4 or 5 hours a night. It was nice, solid sleep. And then judging herself that she needed more, shooting.
Yeah.
It was like, that was all she needed, as far as I can see. And so I knew a woman in college. She had 3 kids, single mom, putting herself through full-time college, working full-time, and 3 kids. Can you imagine what an animal this woman was? I go, how much sleep do you get? She goes, go to bed at midnight, get up at 5. Fuck. Wow.
That's a ton of people do that.
Wow. I need 8 to 10. I just can't function on less.
Wow. 8 to 10. Well, I could see why you're so busy.
I learned this in, well, we'll keep it on topic here. And we could go, there's so many topics and side tangents and whatnots.
But you said some people only need the 4.5, and you whatever.
And my need is just different.
Yeah, your need is different.
No, I could be brainwashing myself too. Well, I could be in a belief system. I need 8 hours, but I actually don't.
I don't want to get to that place.
Babaji said, if your energy is good, your digestion is good, you don't need a lot of sleep. Actually, good digestion, you don't need as much sleep.
Okay. You know that philosopher Jordan Peterson out there? He's quite popular in the intellectual scene. So you can check him out. Just go to YouTube and type in Jordan Peterson. You get he's very smart. And he's on an all meat diet, 100% meat. I think it's raw. And so this interviewer was asking him, he's still on the all raw meat diet. And he goes, unfortunately, yes. And they're like, well, why are you doing it? And he goes, because I only sleep 4 hours a night now. And all my autoimmune problems went away. And all my joint pain went away. And he was describing this list of symptoms. And there's no way he's eating only cooked meat and surviving like that. It's got to be raw. And I'm listening to this man and I'm going, that's why one of my clients, he's cured of his Lyme symptoms when he eats raw liver. As soon as it's cooked, his symptoms come back.
Where do you get the raw liver?
At this point, get it wherever you can. Because people aren't gonna be able to find grass-fed organic. It's a tier. It's a tiered system. Grass-fed organic, USDA. If you know a farmer, all the better, But I went and bought a USDA liver. I was selling down at Deluxe here down the street, and it's like I had a good hit on it, because there's a lot of good non-organic farmers out there that aren't certified that just went FU to the USDA and their certification standards too. There's that, and I think Deluxe is sourcing from those people because this liver was,
Wow,
yeah,
good.
So you have to go with self-muscle testing too, and trust that, like I do, was a point of, I wouldn't call it belief at this point because beliefs. It could be. I'm willing to say that it could be a belief, but it's a gyroscope inside all of us, and most of us are. It's subtle, and we aren't aware of how it operates. But my gyroscope, I've made a lot of what would be called terrible decisions the last 2 years business-wise. But one of them, I found out later that I lost $7,000, but the man that I helped save told me he would have committed suicide if I hadn't gotten him out of where he was with that money. And so I'm like, okay, business wise, I lost $7,000, but is that worth a human life? Fuck yeah, it was worth it, you know? And then another man worked for me for 10 months over in Africa, and he got 10 grand of my money, and I got a website and some good infrastructure established. So 10 grand where this guy was, and the Gambia was probably, you know, like in the Philippines right now, $1 American buys a full day's food. Just the relativity of the world. So what would $1 US get you in Africa and the Gambia? You know, so he got $10,000 that year. I was like, it's probably a moped and a new apartment, you know, and so I'm happy for our work together, you know, like no hard feelings on my side. Yeah, he was a good man. I won't name him though. He probably don't want to be named, but there's a point where I'm looking at lifelong partners, you know, and so it's like, that's why I'm hanging out with you guys, because it's like lifelong community. I know when I'm dying, I don't want people sitting around me. I don't want to die alone. It doesn't matter actually but it'd be nice to have, you know, people gathered around. And I know that you guys would probably want that. And I'm hospice trained, you know, so death and dying is like, sure, I'm in. One of my friends watched his mother die recently, and he saw his child born. He said, Craig, it was so weird. It's like the same thing.
Yeah.
You've seen both too?
Yeah.
Isn't that
I
weird?
haven't seen so much birth, but yeah, I get it.
Isn't that cool? Yeah, one of my best friends died. I was present in the hospital room, and she flew out the window. Her soul. It was one of those remarkable experiences in my life. But that's another story. Okay, cleansing. Let's see. We go back to the gold. So I should probably do a little nuts and bolts thing here. So, you know, how do we let go is the query that these people are reading on the screen share right now. How is it part of a larger process? And then I mentioned the cleanse. So there's something about having the group support and the accountability that really makes it better. That's why Craig Lane does a group cleanse, or group activities, or my gender alchemy stuff. Because if you set goals and you know, like, oh shit, I told the group I was going to have that done in a week, and I haven't gotten it done, and it's the night before, I got to either re-up my goal or I got to hold myself accountable to my word. Because in Irish and old Scottish Gaelic, you're bound to your word. That's why if I give my word, it's like Jamie on Outlander, if you ever saw that series. He's Scottish and very honorable. I said, he's not doing what I want him to do. And they said, make him give his word. Make him give his word. And she made him give his word. And then he's like, fuck, now I've got to do it. Because I'm bound to my word. It's honor.
Yeah, I've been doing that lately, and I'm exhausted. It's like I feel like there's this pressure. You got it in your mind. You know, this is the goal you set.
Every men's group we go over this.
I'm at the effect.
Every men's group we go over this because
and I don't want to be at the effect. Do you know what I mean? I want to be as present as I can be.
But you don't want to overcommit. If you're overwhelmed with all of your yeses, then there's too many yeses and there's too much accountability. You got to lower your commitment level until you're not overwhelmed anymore. That's the gauge right there. That's how I gauge my life. Like I teach, when you have a spare moment coming up in your schedule, instead of scheduling one more thing, go take a rest break. Because we need that recovery time as empathic people, because I don't actually feel anything. Like right now, I won't feel any of this. And then I go to my quiet time, and that's when I actually feel what just happened.
Yeah, it's a process.
It's just the way it works for me. Some people, they actually feel while they're talking. But it's the opposite with me. Amazing insights that come out of me. But it's like Edgar Casey stuff. It's like, what did I just say? And I have to go back and rewind it through reflection.
I think I can feel that's what's up with you. I can tell that.
There's another
By
force.
cadence almost.
There's another force
Cadence.
running this. What you see here is not what I see. I see a transparent being, and there's something in the background shining through. That's my experience right now. Right. And you're part of the theater that I'm a part of too, but it's pretty transparent at this point. There's actually a light sometimes. I think there's a car in my rearview mirror, and I'll keep turning around, but there's a light back there now. You know, Babaji knows about this shit, you know.
And Rev D used to say, well, if you weren't in the church at that time, that wouldn't have come through.
Yeah.
Yeah, just what you're saying. You know, the audience brings forth whatever.
So part of like this experience, the ultimate experience of experience is a non-experience, if you understand. Enlightenment is a stateless state. Enlightenment's not a state. Enlightenment is always and already here.
Yeah, it's an amazing place.
If we start that, then how do we unenlighten ourselves away from what's always and already here? That's the premise of, and that's what the cleanse benefit is if you're watching this and you've gotten this far with this, I mean, oh my God, you're like an enlightened master. If you can keep up this far. So we let go through lining up with what's already let go inside of us, if you can put it any better. We let go through aligning with what's already let go. That's why Jesus said, you're already forgiven, because you are forgiven the moment you sin by this higher force. Because why? It's just theater here. And it's not just theater, it's a magnificent theater, but it is theater. It's Maya. When the Hindus call it Maya, illusion. This is the theater. This is the sun. The Father is where the source of the theater comes from, but the Father isn't the absolute everything either. Because it's kind of boring in the absolute. There's no drama.
So that's why we're here.
We're here for the drama.
Oh gosh.
It's not boring, is it?
See, you're getting it now. So we wake up and we go to sleep, and that's our life, is being awake and asleep. I'm awake and aware of what's going on. Oh, fuck, I'm back in the drama. But it's not, oh, fuck. The enlightened, there's 3 stages of enlightenment, as one teacher presented. There's the, uh-oh, that person's around the corner again kind of feeling. You know that feeling of people you don't like oh, yeah, I'm going to sneak around the corner and avoid.
Well.
The next highest level is, oh, there's so-and-so. It's not enthusiastic, but it's not, it's like, oh, yeah, there's so-and-so. The highest level is, oh, there's so-and-so. Let's go have some improv theater fun. Why do you think you see me doing what I'm doing up here? It's fucking improv theater. Now, for the last half to 2/3 of many of the last 15 days, it's been avoid suicide improv theater. You know, it's been that bad, but, you know, nevertheless, I'm aware of what's going on. And it's like, am I really going to take the life of this earth suit? Probably not, but, you know, this is another one of those contractions. If you follow this far, then you might as well just hear this story. I don't often say this in public, but I know what I was in the life before this. And I made a terrible mistake, a couple of them at the end. And I came back as I was a woman, and I came back, died in 1962, drove a bus or a car off a cliff, either on purpose or by accident. And I found this out through 15 years of meditating. These story images would come in, these daydreams and these stories. And I'm like, that wasn't this life. The fuck is that? And then I just sit with it, you know, in these 35-minute silent meditations, you know, a lot of stuff comes up.
Yeah.
Imagine doing 5 days of silence. You get down to the bottom of the garbage can at some point where like the shit that you were having when you were 3, 4, 5 starts coming up. You know, I had memories from like, you know, infancy coming up in these silent retreats in Mount Madonna on the 5th day, where it's like you're at the bottom, because awareness, that's what awareness does, is it starts at the top levels of trauma, processes them, and works its way down. That's why I sit in silence, because that's the fast track. It's a rocky road. It's a rocky road at times, but so we align with what's already letting go, because what's already letting go is fascinated with everything, even pain. That's my living experience. I don't fret about pain a whole lot now, because I know that it is another experience. It really sucks. I prefer not to have it. But on some level, there were ways to manage that too that most people don't even realize, through breathing. And one of my friends would have bled out. Yeah, we're going to end in a minute here.
The tapping.
Oh, okay.
I was saying.
Tapping.
Have said tapping.
Acupuncture.
Relieves the pain.
If you know what points to use for acupressure, you can relieve pain. So really, what is a cleanse? I'm going to end on that and just say, you know, if you do cleansing and you have a sincere desire to be better, and that's their baseline, like I was, like I just want to be better. I wanted to be a better lover, better athlete, you know, a lot of it was just sincere. Like I just wanted to keep being better, you know, and so cleansing makes you better because you're putting up a voluntary piece of suffering in front of your ego. I mean, let's not kid. Your ego doesn't want to do a cleanse. It really doesn't. So just like the ego doesn't go sit at a silent retreat for 5 days, it's another force that drives us to a silent retreat, because the ego is not going to drive itself to sit in front of instead of a wall for 5 days. It's another force through the heart that's like, I got to do this. And so it's a voluntary austerity. And my experiences show me that the more voluntary suffering I take on through cleansing, the less involuntary suffering I have through injuries, accidents, and illnesses. So I do voluntary suffering to avoid involuntary suffering or accidental suffering. Accidents. One of my teachers says there's no accidents. I was getting my mind blown by these Japanese masters. I'd stumbled and hit my arm or something. He goes, "Oh, no accident." I was like, "What?" He goes, "Oh no." And he says, "You know how those flies always land right there on you?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "They attracted to chi right there. No accident." He goes, your arm had imbalance. It attracted the injury. I'm like, "Are you freaking kidding me?" Oh my God. This guy was on fire.
Oh,
True master. He was a true master. This guy, he had it dialed in.
he was what, Qigong? Or?
He was a macrobiotic, one of the certified macrobiotic teachers, but he came out of Japan. His English was still kind of poor, but I just referred to him as the master because whenever he talked, there was always some wisdom that came out of his mouth. Like he said, "I'll sum up Western medicine in one word." And we're all like on our edge of our seat. Wow, one word.
Uh-oh.
And he goes, "Arrogance."
You were gonna say garbage.
No, arrogance. I was like, "Oh, that's perfect." Arrogant. That's just,
Wow.
isn't that brilliant? One word, arrogant. It's just perfect for Western medicine. That's why the Indians said, "We have nothing to teach you, white man, because you already know everything."
Oh, so.
That's a great put down.
Paramahansa Yogananda said, if the spiritual, being of the India could merge with the intellect, with all whatever we
West.
consider great with West,
Yeah.
it'd be pretty good if they could merge.
Well, that was the goal.
Spiritual.
That's why he
India.
was sent over, because the materialism of the West
That's what it
was going to kill the world, and we need to merge that with the wisdom of the East. And then the Chinese sent guys over, the Japanese came over, the Indians came over, and we have what we have because 100 years ago and 150 years ago they saw what was happening, and they were like, "Oh fuck, they're going to destroy all of us if we don't send some masters over there and teach these materialistic idiots about the immaterial world." And they've succeeded because we're not going to go under. We would have already been wiped out. They've been trying.
Yeah.
You know that there's like 500 nuclear bombs have been launched in the Arctic Ocean since the 50s. 500? At least. Yeah. I have some reliable sourcing there, folks, and I'm not making a bold. I mean, I don't like to make these claims. It's just like,
you mean for testing?
Yeah. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens with all the radiation in the ocean. And then Nevada, we all know that they were using Nevada as a test site, nuclear bombs in the deserts and underground and above ground too. They didn't tell us that stuff, but they were. How do I know that? I have direct veterans who were there telling me stuff, and their children. Like, I don't make bold claims like that. That's part of the suicide stuff. Just knowing stuff about, oh my God, they launched how many other nuclear bombs in the Arctic Circle? So part of that higher level of awareness that cleansing brought me to is, Adyashanti had a great metaphor, is on the spiritual ladder of life, in the dualistic world, the joy gets higher, but so does the pain or the possibility of pain. And what we avoid is we want to ascend, but we don't realize the process of ascension also means we want our freedom, but we have to let go of our idea of freedom. We have to let go of our agenda for the world. In order for us to be free, we have to free the world of us and our agenda. Then we'll be truly free. I think that's just so resonant with me. It's what we call, that's the subtle spiritual ego stuff. Because my king of the universe wants, every woman to love me. I want to have sex at least once a day. I want to grow the perfect plants in my garden. I want to have a waterfall on my property with a pool. You've got your queen of the universe, I'm sure, that has her preferences, right? But I free the world of all that. I have to free the world of that. I can imagine it and put it up there on the cook wheel of God. Hey, God, here's my order. Please give me this, and I may or may not get it because it may not be the grace of the divine to give it to me,
So it takes dispassion.
We don't want dispassion either. We just don't want passion to go into excess, which we call mania. It was part of our conversation last night with this woman I was meeting with out on the west side, and it was about this very thing. Doesn't a woman want a man with passion? Don't you? As a lover, especially? Don't you want a passionate man?
Yes. Someone who's alive.
Yeah.
And vital.
That's energy.
Not just
passion is fire, right?
Yeah, not just sexual, but just alive about life.
The passion with curiosity is passion to me, right? So, okay, so, but you don't want too much fire, right? Because then it's not safe. Like a man who has unsafe tendencies, like yells a lot and violent tendencies, right? That's too much passion.
It has to be balanced with compassion.
So we call that, I mean, when I get too much passion, then we call that mania, and it clouds awareness. Just like too much fire, you can't see through a bright light, right? But if there's just enough light, you can see clearly. So too much light clouds discernment, just like too little light also clouds discernment. That's how I describe health, right? Excessive yang blinds you, as well as deficient yang or light. So, and I know what that looks like because I've been told you have smothering energy. Right. And so if I go excess, then I'm already overwhelming. And you guys know, you're sitting in the room with me. You know, I have people that tell me like, you got big energy, dude. And it's like, so I have to work on that, you know? And so cleansing then, you know, it makes us more aware that we're more in touch with these parts that are in this fluid, subtle state. And so we're given opportunities during our cleanse to embody our so-called realizations. Like, okay, you said you're not going to do coffee for a week. Let's see, the rubber hit the road now. Because some people like the idea of doing something more than the actual doing of it.
Yeah.
That's an Aquarian thing. One of my Aquarian friends who's now dead, he laughed at age 33, he laughingly said, I think Aquarians like the idea of relationship more than actually being in a relationship. And I just laughed. Right. I don't think it was unique to Aquarians, but he was an Aquarian male. He died on his 33rd year. Lee, he's the one on my website. I mean, on the Facebook, my Facebook avatar is him hugging a big old tree, because he taught me a lot of what I know about the natural world. Lee Osbaldiston, yeah. Yeah. So he's Aquarian. He was one of the most crazy, contradictory characters I think I've ever met. Lee, we bless you. Oh yeah, I'm dedicating tonight's talk to my brother Chris and Lee, and there's one other person that popped in. I think I'm going to bless Dr. Sawyer, Scott Sawyer, for our great chat today too. And so the last part is that if you want to do a cleanse, then just think, what is cleansing? Well, cleansing means like washing. So it means you feel clearer. And then chemically, just think cleansing is there's microbial toxins in your body from all the bad bugs and their poop. Get over it. There's a lot of poop in your body. You're mostly poop. So get over it. Think of your lymphatic system as the toilet for all the poop. So you want your lymph system flowing well. And guess what? Your lymph system doesn't move unless you move. So that means the toilet gets really stagnant. That's why you feel rotten when you sit too long. Then you've got normal metabolic poisons, right? Like stuff that just goes wrong with metabolism, or, you know, generally internal mutations and whatnot. And that's normal generally, but it gets excessive in today's world. And then you've got toxins that corrupt the system from heavy metals. And those are without precedent in today's world. And maybe not. Maybe there were volcanoes, all kinds of heavy metals around ancient life on Earth. We don't know. But heavy metal elements are definitely damaging, can be damaging to the system. And that's another third form of toxin. Fourth form of chemical toxins. DDT and, you know, Silent Spring shit, you know, Rachel Carson shit, and, you know, chemical toxins. And the last one, which is particularly unique to today's world, are radiation-induced damage toxins. In other words, frequency toxins, right?
Non-ionizing radiation.
We have ionizing and non-ionizing radiation. And what they call radio frequencies are microwaves, folks. And they're on mountaintops now, and those NEX RAD towers, NEXRAD towers. Anytime you see a ball on a mountaintop, that's how they're stopping the rain, because they're shining these microwaves out from them. Right. Oh, we're just measuring the rain with it, folks. No, they're not. I can see it on the radar. It's sickening to look at the radar now during a storm, because we'll see these straight line, they call them artifacts, but they're not artifacts. It's actually showing the microwaves beaming out into the rain, burning it up in a microwave. And so we have all these microwave cells. And if you don't believe me, you know, there's hundreds and thousands of articles out there about that. It's just been suppressed because when Motorola did their first cell phone study in the 80s, I think, it was like, well known, it was like, it's fucked up. And so they buried all of it. And microwaves was the same thing. They knew they were messed up, but they ran it through anyways. And they being the government and the corrupt industries. and then their lobbying interest and all the middlemen in between. This club is being broken up now, if you hadn't noticed. So we have these 5 toxins floating around, and they're, imagine, a nice clear pool of water, it's like blue or right, bluish, water is bluish depending on the background. So, okay, bluish, greenish water, and then suddenly you throw a bunch of mud in the water. So cleansing would be getting the mud out by simple definition, So chemically then you have your base elements, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, sulfur, nitrogen. That's the basis of most of life. In the chemical table, periodic table, you could just say the chosen ones, CHSON. One teacher, I love that metaphor, that acronym. The chosen ones is most of life. And all carbohydrates, all proteins, and all fats. That's the base skeleton of all those molecules. And so then if you throw in like toxins, then would be like iridium or something, something down on the bottom of the periodic table that's considered radioactive. Well, that would be considered a toxin by the definition of cleansing. And the body's job would be to gobble it up and get it out, or to take it and transmute it to something else, or transform it to something else. It's called transmutation. And it does happen in the body. Seaweeds are doing it in the ocean, and fungus is doing it in the earth. They're transmuting toxins to desirable elements. It's not talked about a lot. The Alameda Naval Yard, you can look up Paul Stament's work with that.
Wow.
The Alameda Naval Yard was an acre that they did a study on. He planted his mycelium and his funguses, and after a year, all the toxins were out of the earth. Transmutation. That's what seaweed's doing in the ocean, is taking radiation and toxins and transmuting it, while not retaining the toxins themselves, just like the liver. People think, oh, the liver is transporting all these toxins. It's a big filter that's full of crud. It's not a filter. It's a transmuter. See, so that's why I don't worry about liver. See, if it's a failing transmuter, then yeah, it's going to have, cirrhotic plaques on it. And you can cut a liver and look at it, and it's like, that chunk don't look so good. You can just cut it out, I mean, I had a cancer case, one of my first cancer cases in 96. This guy, he ended up dying, but in his original liver cancer, they removed 90% of his liver, and it grew back. It grew back. Wow.
Wow. 90%. How fast? I wonder.
But then he didn't fix the lifestyle.
Yeah.
So he died very quickly on round 2. That's generally what happens. You're usually given a chance like that. Like, okay, we'll end with Dr. Satellaro. This is a great cancer story that got me started. And it's sort of inspiring, sort of not. But so the base of cleansing then, so if you're a YouTuber and you watch this, or you're following me for whatever reason, the few of you that do, then the process of the cleanse is going to be basically, the goal is going to be a daily video blog on on YouTube, but I'll probably share it on a few other the social medias. And because what the feedback I'm getting is not really anybody signed up this time, basically because you go to the website and it just looks confusing and you don't really know the process. Granted, if you're going to spend $300 in 3 weeks of your life, you really want to have it outlined a little more clearly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a whole video series of here's the journey as I go through it. And I won't be compliant for the whole 3 weeks. I can almost guarantee you. And so the journey is also one of self-forgiveness. Okay, I fucked up on day 15 of 21, big deal. And that's part of what is also for me to teach and be an example of like, hey, you pick yourself up and you move on to the next day. You don't shame yourself for it, because that's part of the cleansing process of being aware of like, I haven't even fallen. It's like, I don't even see it as falling anymore. It's like, I've done through at least 100 cleanses in my life, tens of thousands of enemas, my sponge has been squeezed so many times. It's like, how much more can I fucking do? So the story, Dr. Satellaro. So let's talk about second chances. I'm on about Craig 9.0. I've had like 9 lives, folks. Like I could literally tell you, like age 21, I broke my neck. Different Craig appeared after that. Age 25, I had my first awakening. Definitely different Craig. A Craig 3.0. And then I got married, and then I was getting married, and then age 30, I had my Saturn return, and then through that process, Craig 4.0 emerged. Then I had my final awakening, age 39 at Mount Madonna. That's Craig 5.0. So it's like, oh my God. So Dr. Satellaro was in Philadelphia, and it's a macrobiotic story. He was dying of cancer, and no one could help him, of course. And you're going to die. And he goes to the macrobiotic center, and he's cured after 6 months or whatever. No more cancer. And he thinks, temporary diet. Well, back to my old ways now. he gets cancer a second time. And he goes back to the macrobiotic diet and cures it again. And
but what a gift he was giving to the rest of us.
he was showing us that this diet was working, right?
And
his colleagues in the hospital in Philadelphia were seeing it because they couldn't help him.
yeah, what and then, don't do after.
So he's cured a second time of cancer.
Wow.
Then he goes back a third time to his old lifestyle and died very quickly.
So it was beautiful.
3 strikes are out. Yeah, 3 strikes are out.
A beautiful example of what not to do too.
I have lots of clients
or
like this too.
What to do and what not to do.
I have so many stories and examples. So the example of Dr. Sotolara is if you're given a second chance, find out why you have cancer, because it's systemic. Even if they say they got everything, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. It's a systemic thing, and it also involves emotional psychic trauma. If you have cancer, that's part of the picture, folks. And you got to dig deep sometimes to remember, because it's usually suppressed trauma. So there was one last story, but it kind of faded out. So I think I should probably just stop. We kind of wanted to keep this to less than an hour. I think we have succeeded. We're about a little less than an hour right now. So really, if you want to cleanse, then I will put this in the description, folks. This is the basic sheet here, the fall cleanse cover sheet, and it has all the little basics. If you're watching the video, then I might put this on at the beginning. And then there's another sheet that basically describes the weekly processes, and that's on the website now on healthalchemy.com. And so you can get kind of a basic cleanse, and then all the PowerPoints and the talks are on the YouTube playlist called Fall Cleanse. I did that like 6 years ago. And so those older PowerPoints are up, and it's all free to the public. So if you want to cleanse the most deepest, and you're just thinking like, I want Craig to keep it simple. I told this woman the other night, I said, if you want to eat raw. And if you want to have calories, then have raw calories. My example to you is I have a raw pesto over here with holy basil. I grow holy basil instead of regular basil, because regular basil pesto makes me too wired. It's too fiery. So Tulsi is very cooling on my system. So that's actually no, it's not vegan. There's a little bit of raw cheddar cheese, but mostly vegan. I usually use miso instead of cheese. I was a trained chef. So, and then there's raw brined and lacto fermented olives. So this is a little bit of sauerkraut juice in there, and these were quote fermented brine for 7 months, and those are raw. So you think raw, and you're doing cleansing. Too much salt, not too good, not cleansing. Too much potassium also. So you have to play with that balance. Like olives are high in potassium and they're bitter. That's what makes them bitter, and that's why you add the salt. And so generally potassium is a very bitter element. Like go have potassium chloride, the fake salt. It's just gross, bitter salt, disgusting. And if you want to do a quick, if you want to fast, then the ultimate cleanse is just to fast. And if you can fast for a day, if you've never fasted before, I'll get off the screen share now, is just do a day. And if you think that you have blood sugar issues, then you want to do an intermittent fast, which means maybe have 1 meal a day, so you're not in this hypoglycemic crash. That's another strategy. One man's strategy was just to have coconut oil around and then melt it in hot water if you have a hypoglycemic crash. That would work for a protein type. That wouldn't work for a carb type. A carb type would need, like what the macrobiotics used to do, is they would boil carrots, squashes, onions, squash, onion. There was one other vegetable, one other sweet vegetable, and there was a ratio of 1 cup of chopped vegetables to 4 cups of water, boil 20 minutes, strain out vegetables, drink broth. And that was their hypoglycemic remedy, which is, it's more starch based, which is not such a big rush. And so I find that generally agreeable, because it's not fruit based either, which is fructose. And that's not a good sugar to have while you're fasting. Like agave is high in fructose, so I avoid agave for the most part.
Celery.
Well, celery wouldn't be sweet, but it would be a good mineral element to have in there for sure. As a matter of fact, if I could only do 1 juice, it would be celery juice. It's that much of a superfood. And then you think raw, and you think, so I would have raw liver. So the raw livers, we ate them all. Oh, here's a little thing. So there's some raw livers in there. The camera's not quite right. Bend it down a little bit. There you go, folks. There's some raw livers.
Same color.
So those are in a teriyaki marinade. And so, yes, liver is cleanse worthy, eaten raw. Why? Well, why would Max Gershon put raw liver in the cancer diet then? You need a lot of cleansing when you got cancer. Raw liver, wheatgrass, and coffee enemas was the trifecta of Gershon's original cancer system. Coffee enema, wheatgrass shots, and raw liver. Liver juice. They would juice it. Oh, I just can't imagine.
Whoa.
Here, I got my wheatgrass shot with one hand and my raw liver juice with the other, and then I'm going to shove some coffee up my butt and woo! Good old times.
Wow. So why raw liver instead of partially cooked?
Back to the enzymes. So remember, the pancreas, this is Dr. William Kelly's cancer theory. I have 35 years in cancer, folks. So, you know, it's like you talk to me about cancer or co-blab or any of this idiotic stuff with immunity. It's like, you know, bless Kerry Mullins, the inventor of the PCR test. He was murdered. You know, Kerry was murdered, and bless him for doing that and speaking out against using it, you know, diagnostically. Once this all finally shit hits the fan, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be, you know, you're a fucking traitor, and you know, we're going to tar and feather you, walk you through the town square, you know. Well, I could be taken out, but that's, like I said, that's my dharma. So you want to get it raw. So cleanse worthy is raw, non-cleanse worthy is cooked. So khichdi is not necessarily a cleanse worthy food for me. When I do khichdi on a cleanse, my cleanse ends because I'm a protein type. So I can have raw liver on a cleanse, but I can't have those cooked carbs. A carb type though, you know, living in India, especially because that's where khichdi came from, was India. Yeah, cleanse worthy food. I would rather tell people sprout some rice and sprout some mung beans, puree them and add your spices, and there's your khichdi. Raw khichdi. Mung bean sprouts, rice sprouts, coriander, turmeric, you know, cumin, whatever, and just puree the whole thing, and then you're getting it all raw. See, with the enzymes. Because remember, thinking requires enzymes. So if you got brain fog, the first question you should say is, how much cooked food am I eating? That's taking away my enzyme that should be up here, is down in my stomach. Because Dr. Kelly's thing was, we're not going to be able to fight cancer because the pancreas is making digestive enzymes and waste digesting enzymes between meals. But if it's exhausted from producing so many digestive enzymes that it doesn't need to do, then it has no ability to make weak spleen chi. There's no ability to make in between waste digesting enzymes, because we get cancer on the average 5 to 10 times a day. So you haven't got the cleanup crew, the garbage men are busy with the cooked food area. There's no waste processing area, and then it backs up in the system and we get, quote, cancer. That's why I live the way I do. Yeah. Because it's cancer prevention is eating raw food and having a good, there's a cancer attitude, folks. Every woman that comes into me with breast cancer, my first question is, okay, when was the trauma? That was somewhere 3 to 12 months prior to your cancer diagnosis. And they all go, how'd you know? Like, because that was the match on the existing flame pile you had built up. Remember, there's no accidents by that one teacher. I might keep that, I take that to heart. It's like, and they're shocked that I know, but 35 years into it, I've done hundreds of breast cancer cases, you know, so it's like, here, this is the process, folks. And most women who get breast cancer after the kids have left home is because there's an identity shift from identity as mother to identity as individual again. And many of them die because they're just not ready. It's not their dharma to be an individual. Their focus and their service was to the children, and then their function's done and they die. Is it a tragedy? Probably not. And from their world, they accomplished their mission, right, which was to raise the kids. But we on the outside are judging, oh, you shouldn't have died. I had a woman, that's what happened. She wanted to go the chemo route, and I told her the consequences of it. And I told her about the identity thing. I said, look, because the kids had left home and she got cancer a year later. I was like, you got to look at this. And she's like, why? Because I'm going to go to the doctors and get chemo and I'll be done with that. And I'm like, oh, you don't get it at all. I'm like, your cancer is the attitude, you know? And she took chemo and died within a month of taking chemo, which is quite common. If they're ready to check out, they're wearing hazmat suits while they're injecting the chemo into you. What does that tell you about how toxic it is? The nurses are wearing hazmat suits. Oh my God. I'm like, and you're letting them inject that into you?
Wow.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, it's like putting radioactive waste in your body and then hoping you survive. Oh my God, you guys. So Yeah,
I'm visual, so I'm already sick.
yeah, so this then one last one. This woman survived her lymphoma because her acupuncturist told her, go to Craig. Craig's a space holder, and tell him the 10 rotten, horrible things you can't forgive yourself for you've done in your life. And it was contextual. It's not everybody needs to do this, but she knew. And I have hundreds of these stories. That's why I'm suicidal and cry a lot. She comes in and she tells me she didn't get to 10. She got to the 7 deepest, darkest secrets of her life. And, she got to say it without being judged, being loved through it all, that she never told another living soul. And we believe she's still alive because she was able to let go and have the faith that she could just relive the experience through telling the story. And so that was cancer. I thought she was going to die.
Yeah.
And she told me all this. And then she told me from the other side as a patient, she said, I never had any doubt. I knew I was going to live. And that's what you got to have. So if you want to cleanse, that's the kind of attitude you got to have. Like, I'm cleaning myself out so I can be clearer, so I can be better, so I can make the world a better place. Hands down, that's the best way to go in. So go in with that.